All right, welcome to week 5. So this week we're going to be moving on to a web-based platform that offers IB material. It's a company out of Sweden called Cognity, and primarily the questions will be coming out of there, reading material. I explained some of the other features last week. This week we'll continue on with topic 4, probability and statistics. And we'll be moving on to section 4.3, which deals with measures of central tendency, which you all know. That's mean, median, mode. And then 2 measures of dispersion that you might not be as familiar with. That's standard deviation and variance. So to get started on this, first thing we've got to do is make sure you can get logged into Cognity. Now, last week, I was with the IT people to make sure that the emails would get into your student addresses. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that that works. So open up your student email, and you should see there should be 3 emails from Cognity. The first is a welcoming one, so that's where we're going to start. And then the other 2 are simply notifications of the reading assignment and a short 5-question homework assignment. So let's start by clicking on the Cognity Your New Student Account. All right, so I set this one up under my student's name, or my son's name, and what it'll do, it'll give you your username, which should be your school email, and then it gives you a temporary password, and then you can change that password to whatever you want. Okay, so you might want to write this down for now once you log in, or cut and paste it onto your clipboard. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to copy that, right click, copy, and then we're going to go log into Cognity with it. So I typed in my email address as my username, and then my cut and paste my password. Okay, let's try log in using Google. So I'm going to use dcroac Math, and that gets me in. So once you're in, I would change your password to something that is easier to understand if you need to, or use your if you logged in using Google, just use that password. But if you do want to change your password, you just click on your icon up here where your name is, and you'll have a profile in there, and there you can change your password if you feel like it. Okay. All right, so back to the home here. What it does is it shows you what the assignments are. So I had to make a copy of this for this just make-believe student. So this is the reading assignment. So to accomplish a reading assignment, there's usually 3 questions at the end of the reading that deal with the material. By completing those, then it registers that you completed the reading assignment. Above that, there is the homework assignment for the first part on measure of central tendency. So if I click Take Assignment Now, okay, now if you notice where it says reading, it's 4 sections, but we're only doing 1 right now to start with. Okay, so for today, for Monday, read Big Picture, which is just an introduction, and then measures of central tendency. So when I click on that, talks about, and I'm not going to read this to you, but this is kind of like what we did last week, but then it starts to talk about, well, what's going to be new? Well, part of what is going to be new is this idea of dispersion, and uh, that being variance and, let me highlight it here, dispersion, variance, and standard deviation. Um, so that's something that you have not done yet. Okay. All right. So then that's the big question part. Okay. So I've done that. Okay. No questions on that. Just had to read it over. Okay. Now I'm going to start reading on measures of central tendency. So we all know what the mean is. That's just another name for average. So if you have a list of data, all this symbol means is you're going to add up the data and then divide by the number of pieces of data. Okay, just like you've done forever. That symbol there just means the sum. So you would add all the numbers up, divide by however many numbers you had in your list. Now, where it's different is if you are given a frequency distribution table, then what you do is you take the frequency, okay, times whatever the value is, then you divide it by the number of data points that you have. And I'll do an example of that here in a second. The last type is, well, what if you have the data is broken into groups, into intervals? All right, when it's broken into intervals, what you do is you take the frequency for that interval and you multiply it by the mid-interval value. That's halfway in the interval. That's what you multiply the frequency by. All right, so here's an example what that would look like. All right, so here we have a frequency table. Table shows the data found by asking 20 students how many different countries they have traveled to in their lifetime, including the one in which they live. Find the mean, median, and mode. So we're doing it from a frequency table. All right, well, we know the median or the mode, that's the one that's most often, so that's pretty straightforward. Okay, we can see that the mode in this case would be 2. All right, now to get the median, we've got to see how many students were actually interviewed. All right, so if that's where we used our cumulative frequency. That's telling us how many were all together. So we got 4 plus 6, 10, plus 3, 13, plus 4, 17, plus 2, 19, plus 1, 20. So our median is n plus 1 divided by 2 value. So in our case, that's 20 plus 1 divided by 2. That's 21 over 2, which is 10.5 value. So our median is going to be halfway between the 10th and the 11th value. Okay, so if I look at my list here, I know the 10th value was a 6. Okay, and then I had 3 4s following that. Excuse me, that was wrong. The 10th value was a 2. Okay, so I had 6 2s. And this was the 10th value. Okay, the 11th value was 4. So halfway between that, we'd say our median is 3 countries. Okay, now you might say, well, there is no one even visited 3 countries. It was 2, then 4. Well, that's what happens when when you find a median and you have an even number of data points. You're going to end up taking an average between 2 values, and you can end up with a result like that. All right, now what's different here is how you get the mean. So to get the mean, you're going to take the frequency and multiply it by its number of countries. So here I'm going to have 1 times 4, all right, then 2 times 6, and I'm going to take those 6 values and add them up. So I got 6, 8, 12, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 72. And then to get my mean, it's going to be 72 divided by the number of data points, which is 20, and that ends up to be 3.6. And then that would be my mean. Now the question is the same type of question, but now we're given classes or intervals instead. Well, what you do is you treat it just like the previous problem, and you use what the mid-interval value of each one of these. So on each one of these, my mid-interval is just halfway between the upper bound and the lower bound. Well, these are easy. Okay, so this is just 51 and so forth. All right, so to find our mode, okay, we can see we got 50 or 12 in the modal class is 159 to 161. So we're going to use the mid interval value. Okay, our median, well, there's 51 values. So my median is going to end up being the 26th term. So I'd have 3 plus 8, 11, 11 and 6, 17, 17 and 12 is 29. So my median value is the 26th term, which we're going to think, we don't know which terms are in here. If they're all 159s, if they're 161s, if they're 159.7. We don't know what the heights are. So we use, to represent that class, we use the mid-interval value. So here we would say our mid-interval value is 160. All right, now to get your mean, you're going to take these values, you're going to take the frequency times the mid-interval value for each one of these, multiply them, and then add up all those sums and divide that by 51. So once you've multiplied all those out and added them up, you get 8253. There's 51 items. We divide that out and we get a median or an average height of 161.82. All right, at the end of the section, at the end of the reading, there will be a place where it'll say, do you want to start on the questions? So there's 3 questions in this particular case that go over this reading. That's just part of the reading assignment. So you'd work through those. There's solutions for each one. And then you would go to the homework assignment, which in this case is 5 questions, very similar to what we did here or what you saw in the notes. All right, I'll see you next time. So Tuesday, we'll start talking about standard deviation and variance, which for some of you might be new. All right, take care.